Well, it's a nice spring day. I thought it was a nice change of pace. I would come down here by the creek and discuss a movie I just went to see. There's your only hint that you'll get there. I just went to see Batman vs. Superman in White City, Oregon, and boy, it was awesome. But mainly, I just wanted to make this little video, and it's actually, I guess, more observations that I've written down after watching the film. I wanted to address concerns that the critics had issues with. This film was really quite amazing. So let me just read what I have here and we'll take it from there. Fans of Superman and Batman have been clamoring for a movie featuring the two of them together for years, since the early 1990s. At the time, Christopher Reeve and Michael Keaton were the likely choices for the roles of Superman and Batman, respectively. Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, bombed at the box office in 1987. Christopher Reeve was paralyzed in a horse riding accident in 1995. Michael Keaton was replaced by Val Kilmer for Batman Forever, also in that same year. The plot of Batman v Superman is quite simple. After Superman's fight with the evil Kryptonians and Man of Steel, society has grown to fear and resent Superman. He is portrayed an all-powerful, godlike figure who plays by his own rules. Gotham City suffered casualties as a result of Zod's attempt to terraform Earth into new Krypton. So, Batman is already angry at Superman for that. Then, things start happening to make Batman dislike Superman even more, and vice versa. So the two superheroes wind up duking it out. But that's only the beginning. The movie gets better from here. Jesse Eisenberg plays Lex Luthor Jr. It's established early on that his father created LexCorp and has apparently died, leaving Alexander Luthor in charge of his business empire and his estate. It seems rather pointless to mention that Superman's arch-nemesis in this movie is the son of another person named Lex Luthor. So it's possible the elder Luthor is still alive and will appear in future installments. More about Eisenberg's performance. He's young, most likely in his early 30s. He is socially awkward and he has an obsessive personality. He carries himself in a rather puerile way. He's fixated on all-powerful beings. He's rather obsessed with gods and devils and demons. Throughout the film, he compares Superman to both the devil and God, but we all know that Lex Luthor covets his power for himself. Luthor is also quirky and quite manic. His performance is practically a carbon copy of Jim Carrey's Riddler from Batman Forever. It begs to wonder, why not cast Jim Carrey in the role of Lex Luthor? Also, we can't seem to escape a zany version of Lex Luthor. One of the reasons Superman was rebooted in 2013 is because the last time Lex Luthor was in a Superman movie played by Kevin Spacey in 2006's Superman Returns, he played a cartoonish, over-the-top villain. The best Lex Luthor, in my opinion, was Michael Rosenbaum's interpretation of the character as portrayed on the television series Smallville. That Luthor was intelligent, cunning, and lethal. Eisenberg's Luthor is all of those things too, but his histrionics diminishes his menace. And he really does remind me of Edward Nygma from Batman Forever. Maybe I should just mention what really bothered me. Lex Luthor was effeminate in this movie. He didn't strike me as particularly manly at all. Actually, upon further thought, he reminds me of Dr. Spencer Reed from Criminal Minds, portrayed by Matthew Gray Gubler. It's not that Lex wasn't fascinating. It's just that he seemed to really be an amalgam of Batman's rogues gallery, namely the Riddler and the Joker. Luthor's supposed to be cold-hearted and ruthless. For a while, rumors swirled that Bryan Cranston would play Lex Luthor. Now that would have been amazing. But for now, we'll have to cope with a wonderkind mad scientist whose hatred of Superman is never really explained other than that Lex is apparently jealous of what he can do. I feel comfortable mentioning a minor spoiler. At the end of the movie, Lex goes to prison. What? Bad guys always get what's coming to them at the end of the movie, right? Well, you had to figure something bad would happen to Lex. I doubt anyone believed that he would simply get away with everything he did in the movie. So anyway, he's sent to prison, and while he's there in prison, the barber shaves his head bald for some reason. I guess this was to show us that Eisenberg is the real deal, that he really is Lex Luthor. But does the prison shave all the inmates' heads, or do they make an exception for Lex? It seems the filmmakers borrowed heavily or outright stole ideas from other films. I saw rehashed plot elements of Superman Returns and The Dark Knight all throughout the film. I won't go into details because I promised a spoiler-free as possible review. That's not necessarily a complaint. Is it really that difficult, though, to come up with original material to work with? Now, gene splicing is an important part of this movie. Lex splices Zod's DNA with his own genetic material to create a monster. I thought it was strange, though, that the Kryptonian robots warned against creating a hybrid life form. It said the life form would be deformed, and sure enough, it was. So if commingling human and Kryptonian DNA would result in creating a hideous freak, does that mean that Lois and Clark would be incapable of having kids someday? In Superman returns home after 5 years to learn that he owes several years of back child support. I guess these filmmakers don't want Lois to get pregnant with Superman's child. Bruce Wayne at the start of this film is seen driving a beautiful Jeep Renegade. It's obvious product placement, but it's out of character for Bruce Wayne to drive an $18,000 production line model car when he's supposed to be a billionaire. In previous movies, Bruce Wayne is seen driving Lamborghinis, $300,000 supercars. It just seems very unlikely that Bruce Wayne would own such an ordinary vehicle. Ben Affleck as Bruce Wayne and Batman was a stroke of genius. The filmmakers were really throwing the dice when they cast him because we all remember how terrible Daredevil was. But to his credit, Ben Affleck hit a home run this time around. I liked the Batman character so much I actually didn't want to see him fight Superman. This is especially true because by the time he does get around to fighting Superman, the audience understands why he wants to, and believe me, nobody is pleased about it. Batman is able to fight Superman because he got a hold of some kryptonite. In fact, he stole it from Lex. He creates thick ablative armor, ablative armor, for himself to wear, and he makes kryptonite weapons. The ensuing fight is nothing short of spectacular. I also like how Batman is easy to understand despite his voice being filtered a la Bane in Dark Knight Rises. Unlike Bane, however, we can easily understand Batman when he speaks. Bane was like Kenny McCormick from South Park. So many people had trouble understanding him that Bane's voice had to be redone in post-production of The Dark Knight Rises. So basically, Batman resents Superman at the beginning of the movie. His hatred for him grows until they fight halfway through the film. But then later, they end up fighting side by side against Lex's monster. Despite having almost killed one another, they're all buddy-buddy now. Wonder Woman joins the fight too. There was a build-up for her, although through Batman's perspective. Finally, she arrives on the scene and helps Superman and Batman fight the monster. I know she's a new character in a different one, but to me she seemed familiar, like Catwoman from The Dark Knight Rises. She interacted way more with Batman and Bruce Wayne than with Superman. Wonder Woman, played by Israeli model and actress Gal Gadot, she is played by her. Comic book fans will understand that Wonder Woman has a history with both Batman and Superman. She's very beautiful and she looks quite sexy in her costume. One more observation about Batman. He's middle-aged, apparently nearing the end of his career as the Caped Crusader. All of his enemies are either in prison or dead. In this movie, Batman is seen going after robbers, kidnappers, murderers, and even child molesters. These are terrible people, but as comic villains go, they're just ordinary run-of-the-mill bad guys. Are there no arch-villains left? Batman is supposed to star in his own standalone movie, and I'm wondering if it's going to take place in the current continuity, or if it will be a prequel. We don't want to see Batman in his golden years spending the rest of his days as a war veteran with PTSD. Also, I really liked Alfred in this movie. Jeremy Irons doesn't play good guys too often, so when he does, it's a special occasion to remember for all time. I've noticed that he's now an amalgam of Lucius Fox and Alfred Pennyworth. He handles all of Bruce Wayne's personal needs, and he is also Batman's mechanic and technical advisor. I hope Jeremy Irons will be in the Batman movie along with Ben Affleck. Now, critics have criticized this film for having a sloppy narrative. They say the plot was incoherent. I strongly disagree. I felt the movie had a simple premise. The movie was way too easy to follow. The movie was easy to follow as plot twists transpired. I was never confused, and I loved every second of this film. Audiences will also notice that Batman is rather proficient with firearms, despite taking a lifelong oath to shun guns. I can explain why he uses them, but then I'd be spoiling the plot again. Let me just say that when you're watching this movie, if you can't tell the difference between what is real and what is fantasy on screen, then I don't know how to help you. Each time Batman used a gun, it was justified. It's definitely shocking to see Batman using a gun, considering Batman's hard and fast rule about abstaining from using them, and he had a code against killing. That brings me to the death toll in this film. Yes, lots of people die in this movie. I suppose the reason why it's so off-putting is because in previous movies, Superman is seen going to painstaking lengths to save people from dying. In this movie, people die around Superman and he seems rather nonchalant about it. So I think this movie seems to effectively pass the torch from Christopher Reeve to Henry Cavill, and also it closes the book on the Reeve era of Superman films. Superman is okay with people dying. He is seldom seen saving people's lives in this film. I think he rescued someone from a natural disaster or something. Mostly he just saves Lois, who is always on the verge of death when he swoops in at the last moment to save her. Henry Cavill's Superman doesn't seem like the type of fellow who would bother spinning the world around backwards to save anyone, except for maybe his mother. There is also an obvious lack of patriotism in this movie. I can't recall a single moment where I saw the American flag. In the olden days, Superman used to declare his undying love for America. He vowed to fight for truth, justice, and the American way. He was even seen carrying Old Glory to the White House in Superman 2. And in Superman 4, he even saluted the flag. Is Superman trying to be politically correct? He was born in America. Why not take pride in your national heritage? Most immigrants who lived here respect the flag of the United States of America, and in fact are encouraged to pledge allegiance to it. Why is Superman any different? The women in this film are just there for eye candy, to sell sex to the audience. Early in the movie, Lois is taking a bath when Clark comes home, and upon seeing her, he dives in, fully clothed, and ravages her as the scene fades to black. Okay, so I spoiled something about this movie. It's not the end of the world. Wonder Woman's time in this movie is quite short. She puts on her sexy costume and strikes some sexually suggestive poses while battling Lex's monster. Should I spoil who it is? I think by now everyone knows, but I think I'll just play it safe. The movie's ending was phenomenal. It went where scant few Hollywood blockbusters dare to go these days, and that's all I'm going to say about that. I will say that it again borrows heavily from The Dark Knight Rises in terms of the scope of what unfolds on screen, but it doesn't wimp out at the last second. This movie dares to end on a rather unconventional note, and it makes no apologies for it. I really must say I loved every part of this movie. All the performances were wonderful. Being a longtime Superman fan and a fairly knowledgeable Batman fan, I recognized many Easter eggs. I wish I could go into them. Basically, if you take away anything from this review, let it be this. Don't listen to harsh criticisms of this movie. They don't know what they're talking about. Batman vs. Superman was like eating Thanksgiving dinner. When the credits rolled, I felt stuffed, like I'd just eaten a slice of pumpkin pie with whipped cream on top. I have been wishing and praying for this movie to be made since I was a child. Granted, I didn't get the actors I wanted, but that's fate, I guess. The ending clearly demands that a sequel be made. Not many superhero movies leave us clamoring for more. In fact, Even after the credits began to roll, many of the moviegoers stayed, hoping to watch a post-credits scene. Alas, there wasn't one. I wonder why Marvel seems to own the market on post-credit sequences. This movie could have really used a bonus scene at the end of the credits, something to give us hope for the future. I know we have a subtle hint of a glorious future indeed by the way the movie ended. I just don't want to wait another 3 years to watch another Superman movie. Speaking of the end credits though, if you watch carefully, the producers of the film eventually thank all the comic book writers for Superman and Batman over the past couple of decades. It's a who's who of comic book storytellers, too, including John Byrne, Jerry Ordway, Marv Wolfman, John Bogdanove, Dan Jurgens, and countless others who have been instrumental in building the success of both Superman and Batman over the last 30 years. I think all those people mentioned probably gave their input to the filmmakers. It really shows, too. So what's the future of DC Comics movies? A Justice League movie is in production, and it's supposed to be released next year. Zack Snyder will return to direct. I assume all the superheroes and all the actors who portray them will return. Ben Affleck's Batman will be spun off into his own standalone movie. This is wonderful news to me. I wish I could discuss the plot a lot more, but that would be a mean thing to do. I think the critics were way too harsh on this film. I believe it's spectacular and I may watch it again soon. I definitely can't wait for it to arrive on DVD. I didn't mean to oversell it, but Batman v Superman will be the jewel in the crown of my movie collection. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.